On today's show, the Golden State Warriors, a strong February, 10-3 in this month. How have the Warriors been able to turn things around? How has moving Klay Thompson to the bench opened things up more for this Warriors team? And Steve Kerr getting a contract extension, carrying him through the 2025-2026 season. What does that say about the Golden State Warriors' goals moving forward? We're going to unpack all of that and more coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Grammarly. No matter what kind of work you do, how you communicate is absolutely key. All those emails, reports, and presentations are equally important to the collaboration needed to get things done. And Grammarly can help you do just that. Grammarly is your AI writing partner to help you communicate more effectively and efficiently so you can make a bigger impact at work. Grammarly helps professionals get more done. Save time with one click and go from editing drafts in hours to mere seconds. 93% of professionals using Grammarly's premium report that it helps them get more work done faster. Grammarly works across 500,000 different apps and websites. By understanding your writing and context, Grammarly provides relevant, personalized suggestions. Make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up and download today for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. That's Grammarly.com/podcast. Grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Warriors, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcast, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Warriors. And here, Cyrus, the Warriors really turning things around after a rough start to this season. They've been on fire as of late. 10 of 13, sorry, not 10 of 13, I apologize, 10-3 in the month of February, playing some really impressive basketball. Now, they couldn't get it done Sunday night against the defending champion Denver Nuggets, but this was a game they final score 119-103, but this was a game that was 91-87, only a 4-point deficit going into the fourth quarter. What happened there, Cyrus, where the Nuggets were able to just kind of blow things open in the fourth?
Well, and just to take a step back even further, is they were leading this game by 15 in the second quarter, and then they were leading 61-47 in that same quarter before the Nuggets pulled off a 14-0 run, tied the game at the half, and then the rest is history. I said this on Locked On Warriors, so apologies for the audience if there's a redundancy here, but tonight was an example of Steve Kerr just forgetting what has led the Warriors to their turnaround, to the 10-3 mark in February, as you mentioned. It was 10-2 before tonight, before their loss to the Nuggets, and that's their young players and the emergence of these young players. We got a DNP for Moses Moody. And it wasn't officially a DNP. It was technically played 1 minute, 45 seconds in garbage time at the very end of the game, but it was a DNP. He didn't play when it mattered. Trayce Jackson-Davis, the young big who has been contributing tremendously, only played 12 minutes. Brandon Podziemski is the one exception. He's been getting a lot of run, but that falls in line with Steve Kerr and his love for ball handlers. And but in general, I feel like Steve Kerr forgot what has carried them. Jonathan Kuminga, another great example, someone who cemented himself as the second best player in this team. He only got 24 minutes. You had Steph, naturally, that goes without saying. Steph led the team in minutes tonight, but Klay Thompson got more minutes. Andrew Wiggins got more minutes. And then another player who got more minutes but did not get enough minutes, and I'll finish on this note. The Nuggets have a player in Nikola Jokic who had a monster game tonight. 32 points, 16 assists, 16 rebounds. That's an incredible stat line. And the Warriors only have really one player who stands a chance defending him, and that's Draymond Green, who has been really the catalyst in terms of this turnaround, besides the young players I mentioned. With Draymond Green, the Warriors are number 2 in the NBA in offensive rating, number 4 in defensive rating. That's how big of an impact Draymond Green has on this Warriors team. But tonight, for some reason, Nikola Jokic logs nearly 37 minutes, and Draymond only played 27. It was inexplicable. You would think that, common sense would dictate match Draymond's minutes with Nikola Jokic, have him play literally every possession on him defensively. But for some reason, there was a 10-minute discrepancy there, and a lot of those minutes were made up with Kevon Looney, a player who cannot defend Nikola Jokic. Anyone who remembers the 2022 first round of the playoffs between the Warriors and Nuggets will remember that Kevon Looney was out of the rotation by the end of that series because he cannot, for the life of him, defend Nikola Jokic. But Steve Kerr, I feel like he's this has been his weakness, especially this year, of playing his favorites over playing the best players, and I feel like tonight was an example of that.
Look, you've been increasingly vocal about some of your frustrations with Steve Kerr, especially this season, but he just received his 2-year contract extension, a record-setting contract extension, $35 million that carries him through the 2025-2026 season. Just kind of thoughts on that extension and what it tells us about, the Warriors organization moving forward and kind of what they want with securing him, locking him down long term.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. You're right. I am a critic of Kerr. It's only been the last year and a half. I never actually uttered a negative thing about him before then, and it started last year when. I feel like it was warranted in the sense of the young players on this team not being developed, especially referring to Kuminga, Moses Moody, just basically, sitting at the end of the bench while two-way players were getting minutes last year. And then
we even had reports kind of confirming, right? There was some of the frustrations
Baxter
there from
Holmes,
the young guys. So
yes.
Yeah.
Baxter Holmes confirmed a report on ESPN a few days ago, what I've been reporting for the last year and a half. And I'm glad someone else reported it because it felt lonely on that island at times. But but at the same time, I'm despite my critique of Kerr for his developmental issues with younger players, he's never developed an all-star player in his 10+ years. With that said, it's not a long extension. 2 years is a length where it's if let's say the trend continues and the Warriors tank somehow and bad things happen, it's short enough where if you have to cut your losses short, it's not the end of the world. But I think the biggest factor for this extension and why I'm not honestly opposed to it, I do support it, is because Stephen Curry wants him. You have to adhere to his wishes for obvious reasons. He's one of the only coaches in this game who can manage Draymond Green. That's a huge reason why you keep Steve Kerr. And then Klay Thompson is going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. He's probably going to test the market, but he loves Steve Kerr. And so by keeping Steve Kerr for these next 2 years, you're keeping him. His contract will end when Stephen Curry's contract ends. So at least you have him for the remainder of Steph's current deal. It helps bring Klay back. The goal of this organization, besides championships, is keeping that core three together. They want those three to be lifers. It's such a rare thing in all professional sports to have never mind one, but to have 3 players be lifers. That level of loyalty is just incredibly unusual in professional sports. And the Warriors are they like the idea of that. They like the nostalgia and sentimentality of keeping the core of the dynasty together until the end. And by keeping Steve Kerr around for 2 more years after this year, you have a much better chance of accomplishing that.
Well, one potential, wrench in the plan of keeping Klay Thompson a lifer is the fact that they moved him to the bench just before the All-Star break. And so just, thoughts on the idea of moving Klay to the bench. How has he kind of responded to that role? And we've talked about Klay before and the fact that he's kind of regressed this year.
He has regressed. His scoring, I believe, is the lowest since his second year in the NBA. Look, there's a soundbite I play on Locked On Warriors a lot, and it's a sound clip of Greg Popovich saying that if Manu Ginobili can come off the bench, anyone can come off the bench. And that especially applies to Klay Thompson, given the Warriors in their current model are trying to emulate extending the dynasty the way the San Antonio Spurs did. They kind of see Jonathan Kuminga playing that Kawhi Leonard role in terms of the transition, and they got their aging core. But part of what makes the most sense about moving Klay to the bench is the team has a huge problem, and I highlighted this on the show tonight, with playing Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins on the court together. When 2/5 of your lineup has those two in it, those two as a duo, their net rating is -134, far and away the worst on the team among duos. They do not work well together anymore. And a lot of it is defensively. A lot of it is the fact that neither player has been consistent. Andrew Wiggins has turned his season around for the most part, but he's still not putting up all-star level numbers. And again, those two together, when they're on the court representing 2/5 of your lineup, it's been a major detriment. So by bringing Klay off the bench, you're now staggering those two, so they're not playing together that often, but you're still giving each of them 25 to 30 minutes a night. So ultimately, I think it's a decision that was well received. Klay himself shockingly, in my opinion, accepted it and didn't complain about it. And so far, it's been good for the most part. His first game off the bench was fantastic, probably his best game of the year. Followed that with an awful game, and then tonight he had a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Is that how you say it? Level of halves, where in the first half he scored 23 points, was on fire, had 0 points in the second half. So the consistency is not there, and that's why he's coming off the bench. But it's been a decision that I think is needed for this team.
Last thing for you here, Cyrus. What's the latest on Chris Paul's hand injury, and how do you envision Steve Kerr kind of reintegrating him into this version of the Warriors, where they've made some drastic changes, right? Moving Kevon Looney to the bench, now recently moving Klay Thompson to the bench. How do you envision kind of reintegrating Chris Paul into this team?
That's been a subject that has caused a lot of anxiety for Warriors fans, members of Dub Nation, because they're always afraid of which player is going to lose minutes in the process. Chris Haynes of TNT reported during the Warriors-Lakers game last Thursday, during the game, his sources reported that, or his sources told him that Chris Paul is going to come back on this upcoming 4-game road trip, which the Warriors are embarking on starting Tuesday at Washington. And my guess is you're going to see Chris Paul's minutes come from Lester Quinones, who was just offered a guaranteed deal following a 2-way contract. And Quinones has been fantastic. So I don't know if it's great news to see Quinones' numbers being sacrificed for Chris Paul. Brandon Podziemski, the rookie who turns 21 today, him and Kuminga are the two youngest players on the Warriors. They're both 21. Brandon Podziemski has been getting a lot of minutes. You might see that number take a dip as well. So I'm guessing that's where it comes from. You also might see some more of those infamous small ball lineups that a lot of fans are not clamoring for, but Steve Kerr loves it. So it is a topic of consternation for this fan base. They're very anxious, very curious myself to see where those minutes actually come from.
Can the Warriors keep up their excellent play from February and keep it going the rest of the season? How will they reintegrate Chris Paul into the lineup once he's back from injury? You'll have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Warriors. Cyrus, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Always, man. Anytime. Thank you.